Welcome to another live stream, Legends. Well, guys, Bitcoin has seen a fairly nice rally yesterday as we ended up getting that FOMC meeting. We got our little bit of a rate cut, but nothing too crazy really came from that. I mean, one thing to mention, I suppose, would be I mentioned in the Pro Signals chat there that it was very possible that we come back down and retest the weekly open, which also lined up with the 4-hour buy signal on the Trendmaster. And so far, I mean, yeah, we got a little wick below, but held that absolutely perfectly. So that's kind of what stopped our, well, I shouldn't say stopped our volatility, stopped the downside move, provided us with support, and continue climbing higher. I am still under the impression that even if we get a little bit of a correction here, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see us come back and test this Trendmaster again. But at this point, I still strongly believe that basically this MDX Trendmaster indicator is pushing us towards that $120,000 level. My reasoning for that, obviously, mainly the fact that it's my Stuber fib, pulling a resistance fib from our all-time highs. The purple box there would be my Stuber fib, the 786 to the 886. So basically 120K, you guys, I want to make this clear. If we get up to that level, I think it's quite possible we see some sort of an immediate rejection on the lower time frames, but I'm not interested in YOLOing a short into that because that is just the start of my resistance, is where I'm going to start being a little cautious on the long button when I'm looking at scalps, is kind of when we get towards that 786. So basically 120,000 to front run that a little bit. But that fib pocket runs from 120 basically to 122.5, if I'm not blind. Yeah, that looks right. And aside from that, you guys, it's very possible that we would grab and do some sort of a swing fail liquidity grab, which could also be a bit of a rising wedge formation, which would line up very well with a retest into my swing fail zone, the 1 to the 115 fib. So if we get up into this red box here, I will strongly be considering taking a hedge short, if nothing else. If I still have some longs running, I'm still long from September 1st when we bought them there. If we get up to this level, I would likely leave my long positions run, but I would be very open to the idea of taking at least a hedge short in case we end up getting a rejection there, just because the stop loss would be so tight. It's not even that I would be bearish, it would just be looking at things from a risk reward type of a setup, and if we happen to get a rejection, at least you're positioned for it then, and it's a very nice stress-free position to be in when you have a hedge open like that. But really, basically anywhere up around that 120 to 127,000 would be very fair game for some sort of a macro rejection. Again, I'm not saying that I'm bearish personally. I'm just outlining where resistance is on this chart. There's not a personal bias there, just stating it for the levels that it currently is, right? Because this is valid for a potential bearish setup here, because on our uptrend here, we basically had this high and we had a higher high. That meant this was our higher low, and we obviously broke that structure. So until we invalidate this range, our range is currently where that downswing started down to where we've bottomed so far. And until one of those levels breaks, that is the range that we currently have in play. So yeah, right now, basically, unless we end up breaking this level, this is all potential resistance if we get up to those levels. One thing to consider, well, actually, on top of that, I know I mentioned in my last stream too, that on the 4-hour here, the Algo Master for the auto Stuber fibs, notice it lines up absolutely perfectly with my own analysis, my own Fibonacci pull there. So it's great to have that AI confluence, that AI, one of the indicators that automatically pulls things systematically, is agreeing with my setup there. So I love having that confluence there. And just another reason why I think it's quite likely we end up targeting this level up here. Obviously don't have to. One thing that would invalidate that theory for me is if we end up, coming back down to this purple buy trend here, but actually flip it into resistance and get a sell signal, which would actually end up being a lower sell signal on the Trendmaster. In that case, I would take that as a very serious warning. at the very least, I would be willing to consider the possibilities that we are seeing a much bigger correction than one like what we've had the last day or two here. I guess just the last few hours more so. At that point, a lower sell signal matching up with lower buy signals, that would be pretty nasty. That would be a big warning from the trend master. And I mean, I love using that indicator for noticing which way the trend is going. It's literally called the trend master. I love using that indicator for not just looking for entries, but also looking when, hey, things may be starting to change, just using it as a warning. Because guys, a lot of people only use indicators in hopes to basically force more and more trades, thinking that's the only way to make money. But a huge part of what I use indicators for is risk management. And in a case like that, I would absolutely be looking to take more profits off my long positions, bumping up stop losses to take more profits if we start to drop. And if nothing else, again, look for hedge shorts a little bit early, because at that point, if we get a lower sell signal, I think that's an early warning sign that the bears are actually hungry and we are not getting up to that macro resistance at that point. Doesn't mean it can't happen in the near or midterm future, whatever. Just at the time, I wouldn't really be targeting that anymore, basically. But so far, so good. We're still holding this. This support basically ranges from 115.8 thousand down to about 114.4 thousand. Anywhere in there, I think would be great to see us find support. Again, staying above the weekly open would be great. We're still actually above the daily open even, so that could even provide a little bit of support in the near future here. Yeah, Bitcoin right now, yeah, we're seeing a little bit of a rejection. We had a little double top here. Actually curious, a little bit of a nasty bearish divergence where we went from very overextended down to much lower RSI, right? Less strength, basically, the relative strength index, less strength at the same price level. So we end up flushing to the downside a little bit, right? But that doesn't mean that we're going to, that all hope is lost, anything like that. Right at this point, I would be looking for something like this even. I could see basically here was a higher low. So at this point, I would hope that the bulls step in basically between 115.4 down to 114.1 basically is the range that I would be looking for support. So if I was looking to scalp something like that, I would be laddering in into my position with stop loss down here. So that would bring the average entry down. Understand that does not mean doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down, making your position way bigger than you normally would. No, quite the opposite, that you're okay if we end up bouncing here, you only get a quarter of your position, if that, depending how you ladder too. Sometimes if it's higher risk, I will do 20%, 20%, 30%, 30%, and that really helps drop the average entry down. Just a form of risk management there. But yeah, if it's going to be a strong trend, quite often we only hit the 786 and then we bounce from there. However, if we end up going all the way down here, that really helps your average entry if you're going to ladder in on the way down. Whereas, unfortunately, if you only hit the 786 and then you start hitting your targets, obviously you're making significantly less profits, but you're playing things safe that way at least. The safest bet would be basically waiting to actually get a double bottom or some sort of a little grab and reclaim that level. Then you have an even tighter stop loss where you could just ladder into this range basically. Considering a little bit past the 115 is usually where I have my invalidation. But I mean, everyone has their own strategies, their own systems that work for them or don't work for them, whichever. But yeah, that's one that I would be eyeing up right now. Trendmaster. So this is one of those times we did lose a higher buy signal here. We still have higher sell signals, so there is a bit of mixed signals as far as the lower time frame Trendmaster right now. It's not a super clear trend, and that's very normal. You don't always have a perfect trend forming, so right now can't use that Well, not that I can't use it. It's just a little bit added risk when they're not moving the same direction as each other. So far, we still do have the higher sells and the higher buys, obviously, but since we lost this level, that's where I start to lose faith on this, and I think that we're coming back down to the lower part of the range, basically. Before I go too much further, actually, you know what? Let's start looking at altcoins. That's a bit. I think that basically gets my point across with Bitcoin. That yeah, short-term pullback is quite natural, but on the midterm, long term, I'm still targeting higher unless that 4-hour signal prints. Bitcoin dominance seeing a very small bounce right now, but all in all, you guys, this is the one thing that's keeping me mega bullish on the market right now. Not necessarily Bitcoin so much, but altcoins. The Bitcoin dominance has just been dropping off an absolute cliff, you guys, and it's not even at my first target yet, is the thing. This fib pull is 5.5 years old, coming on 6 years. Well, or sorry, rather, yeah, almost 5 years, I guess. What, 4.5 years? I guess I was saying that wrong in the last few streams, but either way, a massive range pull over 4 years for sure. And that is just a typical Stuber fib, you guys, and we got rejected right at the 786, started losing diagonal trend lines. I know not everyone loves trend lines, but I have specific ones that I do like when I actually use the exact wick points, basically. I like using diagonal trend lines, so to see that we lost 2 very significant ones and also just playing a typical Stuber setup, we are not even at the 0.5 fib yet, and from there you guys know my main target is generally the 214 target. So in that case, this move isn't even half over yet, and the altcoins have been performing great for the last few months, basically ever since we dropped this, ever since we hit that 786. So altcoins still looking pretty good. And guys, like, Bitcoin's looking fine, don't get me wrong, but I would expect Bitcoin to top first in the market cycle, basically, and then altcoins would still get a nice push. Well, typically that's how the last couple of cycles played out. So I would expect something very similar this time. And honestly, Bitcoin and the whole market, I was actually talking about this on a stream recently. The whole market is doing a fantastic job of staircasing higher, right? I mean, this weekly right here, it doesn't look like any sort of blow off top or anything like that. Yeah, I don't really expect the price to go too much higher. But when I really look at this on the weekly chart, the beautiful buy trend that we're still holding at this point, and like I said, just staircasing higher, right? Higher high, higher high, higher low. And even this, I mean, even where we got this little trading range, notice that we got this little bit of coiling up. That was basically a month or two. Yeah, basically a couple months here. And then we go a little bit higher. And then we never do, you know, we just come back and retest that support. But so far we're trading higher. This whole trend here, we're just getting these ranges and staircasing higher, which that means that we're actually building support on the way up, which is great, right? If we're, you know, it's when you go straight up like this and you don't consolidate much that when you start to lose those levels, it's very quick to see a big correction, right? So the fact that we are staircasing still, it still looks relatively healthy in my opinion. We start losing this buy trend, which also happens to line up with my support of our little micro range here. I shouldn't even say micro range because it is a weekly time frame, but just this small range here, the horizontal support lining up very well with the MDX Trendmaster there on the weekly time frame. And just, I mean, just to take a look at what the buy signals have generally looked like with this indicator, I mean, that support holds very strong in general. So, I mean, right now, until we lose that, I don't really want to fight that. The macro trend is just so obviously to the upside right now, still at this point. I would rather play this trend until the end at this point, rather than looking for some sort of ego boost by guessing an exact reversal, basically. Losing a whole bunch of shorts, but then happen to catch the top and then boost the ego kind of a thing. I'm not really interested in that. As long as the Bitcoin dominance is dropping like that, I am going to remain bullish on this market, basically. Ethereum on the 4 hour still printing higher sell signals, higher buy signals with the trend master, still holding that. I mean, we hit that 786. I still have half of this position open. Beautiful trend. We're still holding that support right now. Yeah, I mean, eventually we might end up losing this, right? It's absolutely possible that the market cycle's over, we go into a bear market, whatever. Absolutely possible. That's why we take profits on the way, right? From entering at the 786, we hit my first target and second target, so really no complaints at this point. As long as you're paying yourself on the way. Basically, the way I trade, you guys, is if I'm pulling a fib, and you guys know that generally 90% of my trades are probably based on fibs. Basically, if I pull those fibs, that is the range I'm playing, right? If that 786 is there, then the targets are the 0.5 and the 214. I shouldn't keep saying the 786 because I think a lot of people just assume that I'm entering the whole position at the 786. But basically, as I start entering at my Stuber levels, and the take profits for at least the first half of my position is the 0.5 fib and the 214 fib. When it comes to profitable trading, you have to be systematic. If you're going to say, I want to see what the price is doing at that level, and there's a good chance you end up missing that whole take profit zone, right? So it's so important when you end up taking a trade to at least have some targets in mind, have an invalidation in mind, set those levels, set those orders. Don't say, I'm going to see how I feel at the time, because feelings and trading generally don't work very well together. So Ethereum at this point, still going quite well. We'll see what happens with the other half of the position, because guys, playing the range first, hoping for that massive breakout second, right? Everyone wants a home run trade, but you can't just always swing at home run trades and think that it's going to end well. You need to pay yourself on the way. So always trading the range first, and yeah, leaving some run. If you're one of those people who often likes to ask, hey, should I close this position or should I let it run? If you're ever asking yourself that, just kind of ask yourself, you guys, if you look at your profits and you think that, you know, this would upset me if I round tripped it from here, take some profits. That's basically the way I look at it. If I ask myself that question and the answer is yes, I'd be upset if I round trip this, I will close a quarter to half of my position at that point, just to make sure, to at least avoid that feeling, right? Solana, we finally hit my 250 target, you guys. I've been talking about that for a month or two now, I think, since down around 150, 160 US dollars. Basically, my reasoning for that is, again, just like what I'm looking at with Bitcoin right now, looking at 120K as resistance. That's the exact same thing I was looking at with Solana, right? I was just looking at where resistance, especially after we ended up breaking the smaller range, right? Here we had a low, lower high. We broke that. After breaking that and starting to trend to the upside, it just makes sense that, okay, I broke the resistance of the smaller trend, right? The immediate downtrend, this guy. After you break that downtrend, well, where did that downtrend start? Well, it started up here. So that's where I'm pulling my fib from, looking for resistance points. Since we broke the smaller range, now it's quite likely we're going to test the larger range. And that's exactly why I figured that Solana would go to at least 250. I actually think it'll go higher. Just like I was talking about with Bitcoin, the 786 is just the start of resistance. But this resistance runs up to about $327 for me would be fair game for some sort of a swing fail liquidity grab, that sort of a thing. But yeah, it's just basically once we get to the 786, we just have to start being careful, right? I'm taking some profits off my Solana long because, hey, we hit one of my targets. I'll take more at the 886, I'll take more at the 1, I'll take more at the 115. If we end up getting up into this pocket, I'll probably take some sort of a hedge. That's if I'm even still in that position. I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, so far Solana looking fantastic. And if I bring up the trend master, same thing, you guys, right? Ever since down here, basically we got higher sell signal, higher sell signal, higher buy signal, higher buy signal. Both of those signals just absolutely beautiful from the trend master because everything's trending one direction. That just called for some beautiful opportunities to the upside there, pushing us towards our macro resistance. So again, just one of my favorite strategies. My two favorite strategies, you guys, are pulling fibs, doing the Stuber fibs, and the trend master, looking for which direction the buy and sell signals are trending. Combining those two things as well, very powerful. Doesn't always line up, but so often that when we, especially on the 5 minute, you see it a lot, where if things are trending the same direction like this, hey, here was our higher buy signal. Let's pull a fib from that pivot. I don't know if it actually would have. Yeah, basically we got real close to the 786, right? Let me just zoom in on that guy so you can see it. But basically pulling from where did we bottom, even if you wanted to use this low, but I just like using the lowest point, so there, to just basically chasing the price. And eventually we come down. It did front run the 786 very slightly, but you can see what I'm getting at is that's a very powerful combination that basically if you have these buy signals trending to the upside, it's time to start. Basically at that point, I'm more interested in playing long positions, no longer interested in playing shorts, more so looking at laddering into long positions. However, if that trend would have broke, I would have felt differently about it, right? If we would have ended up losing this level, let's say right here, then at that point I would lose faith in this trend because we lost the upward trending buy signal support. But that can be a very powerful signal as well, and combining it with other things, right? If you have your own strategies that you like, considering taking a look at that, just see if that's something that lines up. Hey, it actually plays out however much percent more on a certain strategy you have if this indicator is lining up with that theory, and then go back and back test, see how often it lines up, kind of a thing. Hype, you guys, hype has been on an absolute mission. I really feel like we're gonna print a higher buy signal very soon here on the 5 minute, and if that happens, I am going to look into taking a long position. I'm actually going to mark out just ahead of time here. That's basically where I'm expecting our support, my invalidation to be, if we print a higher buy signal. Right now it's too early to say, but that's what I'm going to be watching for. Looking at a longer time frame, I mean, guys, pretty much every day for the last little while, aside from the little pullback, hype has just been setting new all-time highs, right? New all-time high, new all-time high, new all-time high, new all-time high. And then we continued the trend yesterday and today. Just performing absolutely beautifully. Again, the trend master on the daily, just pushing this thing to the upside. Never did get a sell signal, only that first buy signal, retested at $17, and the rest is history. Hype has basically just been in price discovery since it broke $35. So that is one that I do not want to bet against. I've been loving scalping hype. Basically, lately, actually, I'm in a handful of long positions right now. I think I'm actually in 12 long positions right now. But for the most part, I have been trading Solana and hype. Lately added AVAX to that list. Jupiter, I took that position on a live stream. Still have a quarter of that guy running. Pepe, ended up taking a Stuber long yesterday. Called that one out in my Telegram ahead of time. What's this one? Doge. I am not in a position on Doge right now. I will take a look at that in a little bit as well. Crow, same thing. Not in a position, but I'll take a look at that. Yeah, got a lot of positions running right now, you guys. Things just look so good, and the altcoins have been so fun to trade lately. And since I'm a big fan of laddering in, laddering out of positions, you know, I ended up in an Ethereum long. Okay, well, that one's running, and then I found one on Solana, and I found one on hype, and then you just end up, you're taking profits on the way on all of them, but that way I can keep my positions running, but also trade other assets, and also I have a few accounts with those positions open, so that's another thing. Having multiple accounts and being able to have multiple positions open is always nice. But yeah, hype looking absolutely fantastic on the daily, you guys. The 4 hour, same thing. Obviously, I think since basically since down here at basically $13, since that buy signal, our first higher one on the 4 hour here on this trend would have been, well, basically whenever we came back to retest at $34. And yeah, right now we're at 58. So absolutely huge. Still just printing higher buy signals, higher sell signals, right? Higher buy, higher buy, higher buy, higher buy, higher buy. So still just such an obvious trend on the trend master. I would never want to fight that. I mean, it's easy for somebody to zoom out, you guys, and say, well, yeah, obviously it's an uptrend. Yeah, but the indicator can actually draw your attention to when that's going to reverse. For example, if we print a lower buy followed by a lower sell, then that's a lot more obvious when you have an indicator pointing it out in that case, right? But so far, this trend is just absolutely beautiful and shows no sign of giving up yet. AVAX, I mean, same thing. Even on the 5-minute, you guys, we got this buy signal with the retest down around $29, now at $35. This is absolutely huge. I actually entered because of a Stuber fib. Right? I actually have 2 AVAX positions, but I entered at the 786, actually on this little bounce here. And then I added another position over here. But yeah, just on an absolute mission there. Trendmaster printing to the upside aggressively. We haven't had a sell signal since yesterday on the 5-minute. This is such a strong trend right here. I want to zoom out to the 4-hour. Yeah, just on a moon mission. Same thing, right? On the 4-hour, you guys, look at these higher buy signals. Look how strong of a signal that is. You know, we end up getting higher buy signal here, around $18 on AVAX. Same thing, then a higher buy signal around $23, a higher buy signal around $25, a higher buy signal around $25, and now we're at 35, right? Just an absolute monster of a trend there. I personally think AVAX will go higher. I think it's targeting 45 or even a little bit higher. Let me take off the Trendmaster. Basically, my reasoning for that is just like what I was looking at with Solana and Bitcoin and everything else, is we have a big level of resistance up here that I just think it makes sense now that we've broken this downtrend that we had, right? Low, lower, low. We end up having a beautiful level of resistance there. It got respected very well. That actually looks like last market cycle's Bitcoin bottom, honestly. But yeah, absolutely beautiful. I'm actually getting more bullish as I look at this, just because that's such a beautiful structure break. But the fact that we broke that makes me really think that we're going to test the resistance of the bigger range. Where did that downtrend, this downtrend that broke here, where did it begin? It began right here. So that's where I'm looking for resistance, starting at the 786, which would be basically around $46 basically. From $46 and up, at that point I start to look for resistance on a macro time frame. And obviously, yeah, there's going to be pullbacks on the shorter time frames, but this looks like it's fairly clear sailing for me to significantly higher. I mean, what would that from here would be another 30% move to the upside. Obviously, it is late in the move. I'm not saying YOLO long right now or anything, but just all in all, this trend looks beautiful. Like I said, that trend master is going to be very strong support if we end up pulling back to it at some point. Because, guys, we are just, when I'm looking at this right now, it looks to me like, for one, we don't even have a higher buy signal yet on the daily here. I think we will get one if we do end up seeing some sort of a pullback. At that point, we need a new sell signal before we can create a higher buy signal. However, at this point, even the fact that here we had a sell and a lower sell, well, here would be that resistance for that lower sell signal, right, where we got our pivot. And not only that, it was respected multiple times, confirming that resistance, and we've broken that downtrend. So even though we don't have higher buy signals yet, this is a big warning to me that we broke that downtrend. So even a pullback at this point, I think, would just be a healthy pullback by the dip kind of a scenario. That's kind of my thoughts on that. 4 hour, what did that look like? Yeah, same thing. 4 hour pushing to the upside aggressively. But I mean, that could come back. That could get very volatile. That's the thing when something's pumping this aggressively. Obviously, the pullbacks can be very aggressive as well. But it's great to see that we have a lot of support below us. Actually, I'm going to keep that there. But just the fact that we ended up having this consolidation at this level, and then blasting up higher, at least we got some consolidation on the way. So now if we pull back, we have support, right? On top of that, we do have that 4-hour Trendmaster support. We have the daily Trendmaster support. Just curious. AI charting tools, the daily open significantly below us at this point. Yeah, what else? We broke the higher high. So again, with the AI charting tools, just looking like a beautiful uptrend there. Just every indicator I look at and just basic market structure is just such an obvious uptrend at this point. We're seeing demand zones build below us as we staircase higher. Love to see that. Liquidations, there is starting to be some liquidity below us, some high leverage liquidations below us, so that is something to consider. But again, until we start breaking structure, I really wouldn't worry about it too much. But it is something that's starting to form as FOMO builds, right? That's again just why some sort of a pullback would be quite natural at some point. Algo Master, that one doesn't do anything. That's invalidated. The daily one also invalidated. Let's see if the 1 hour's got anything. Invalidated. Yeah. All the Algo Master fib pulls are either already played out or invalidated at this point. So volume delta, point of control significantly below us at around $30. So just everything I look at, you guys, there's just support below us, right? So AVAX is looking just fantastic for now. Jupiter on the 1 hour, I want to check the Trendmaster on that. So same thing, right? We got those higher buy signals. I was talking about this as a confirmation earlier, right? Let's just say I'm actually going to save this and then remove all of my drawings. But this would be a good example. Did it actually play out? I don't know if that would have played out. Yeah, so that happened. So basically right here is where the Trendmaster, we get a higher buy signal. Like I said, combining the two strategies, sometimes it can get a little confusing, don't get me wrong, but a very powerful strategy. But here's a good example where we have this buy signal, higher buy signal. So at that point, since this is my higher buy signal, this would be that pivot point, right? The low point just before that new buy signal. So pulling a fib and chasing the price from there, eventually we came back to that 786, right? So combining those two as a strategy has been very profitable for the month of September. I think I shared it in the wins, the PNL channel there, but I'm hitting about a 70% hit rate this month so far. One of my BloFin accounts is up 150 or 140% this month so far. It's just been trading the upside and just combining these two strategies, basically Stuber fibs and looking at the Trendmaster, which way it's trending, and it's been very powerful. Same thing here. Now we have a higher buy signal. So if we end up seeing a pullback at this point, that's one of those times where I'd be looking at, okay, well, this would have been the lowest point kind of since that buy signal. So I would chase the price. And right now, if we ended up pulling back, I would be looking at laddering into positions, something like this with invalidation just a little below the 115. Not saying that has to happen. We might just find support off this and continue trending higher, but it's one of those things that if you do see that setup, it can be quite powerful. It's not going to work every time, but that's why laddering into a position and having a nice controlled loss when it happens, right? Because trading, you're never going to win every trade, but you want to control those losses when they happen. So if I laddered, let's just say theoretically we end up coming down, ladder in those 4 positions, get the average entry somewhere around here, stop loss somewhere around there, and we get the whole range play out again. We get that retest. You're looking at something like a 5-to-1 risk reward in that kind of a scenario. And depending how you ladder in, you can obviously end up playing with that and drop your average entry if you want to, depending how you want to ladder in. Or waiting until you're in this pocket, which is what I did on the position that I was showing you. I'll get into that in a second, actually. But that's where if you can nail basically pulling these fibs and looking for this swing fail pocket. Basically, you start consolidating, you start finding support in that range without dropping the 115. That's where you can get yourself into a very tight risk reward setup. And the one that I took was actually it was approximately a 10-1. Let me just reload it here. Yeah, basically, because that's what it was, right? We were trading. Someone had requested that I look at it on a live stream, one of the public ones that I was doing on Financial Summit. But basically, he wanted me to check Jupiter, and I was like, oh, we broke some structure here. And then I was like, wait a second, that doesn't look like it broke the 115, and we were trading right in the middle of this pocket. I was like, screw it, all along this, just for the fact of the risk reward, right? 10-1, huge. And it did play out, and now it's still running at this point. So it's actually currently at about a 12-1, but I only have about a quarter of that position still open at this point. But yeah, beautiful. That's just, you know, again, it's not about winning every position, but with your proper risk reward and having your winners a lot bigger than your losses, that can be very powerful. And that's why, unfortunately, what people really struggle with is when they see something like this. Even if I was bearish on this, let's say we went a little bit further, I would have been bearish on that. However, it's still very natural to get a pullback, something like that, and then you get that bearish continuation. Whereas a lot of people, they want to pull the trigger on a short right here because, hey, we broke support, time to short right now. Kind of. Often that can mean I broke support, I'm interested in looking for a short, but it doesn't necessarily mean short right now. And a lot of people try to mostly like to break out trade because support always looks weakest and resistance, the price always looks strongest. But until those levels actually break, I mean, it's just risky trading into them, right? I would always rather look for that nice tight risk reward, because if you were shorting something like this, I mean, let's just say realistically, you short something like this, your invalidation is above that range. And what you're just like, how far would it have to drop for you to get a proper risk reward on something like that? Like a 3-1. It would have to drop such a large amount. It's just not even realistic. That, or your invalidation isn't necessarily proper, right? Because then you're if you have your stop loss anywhere else in here, basically you're not worried about the structure of the confirmed lower high, right? Hopefully that makes sense. What else? Pepe I wanted to look at. Oh no, I forgot to set an order on that. Damn it. I even had it mapped out. It just had to happen in the last few minutes, didn't it? Just had to. Piss. Oh well, at least I have that other Pepe position open. But yeah, I definitely wanted to add to that one. That was just a typical Stuber. And guys, here's a perfect example, right? I had it mapped out, but here's where we had another higher buy signal. Here was the pivot point where we got that buy signal from, and just chasing the price to where we topped out there. Notice we even have a higher sell signal, but we pulled back to that 786, and we've already hit the first target there, working our way towards the second target. So again, just showing how that strategy, combining those two things, can be very powerful and just have an obvious setup. And the thing is, it's not going to work out every time, but again, at least it's something systematic and you can repeat it. And yeah, it's going to take the odd loss, but at least you have a controlled loss in something like that. It's not just based off a gut feeling. There's two different reasons for taking that trade, basically. I'd say, well, there's more than two reasons, but that's two strategies combined for one setup, right? I will catch up on the chat right away here, guys. I just want to go over my main analysis here first. I did promise you, Maz, I would take a look at Doge. I mean, it's looking fantastic. Very strong trend. Even if we pull back, no matter how you look at it on the 4 hour here, we obviously set a higher high. So even a pullback at this point, yeah, it's possible we're just retesting that for a bearish retest and we're going to go lower. I don't know, depending obviously what the market's going to do the next few days. But I mean, we obviously have this strong buy signal here as potential support. But worst case scenario, if we start dumping, we do have this as a confirmed higher low. Right, just because this is our high, higher high, lowest point between the two, our higher low. So worst case scenario, I would be looking at pulling a fib something like this. And looking at support starting basically around 21.4. But yeah, so far, I mean, it's still holding this trend. It obviously broke this downtrend, right? Again, lower sell signal, lower sell signal. We broke that resistance. We broke this resistance. We're holding the buy trend. So even though that was a lower buy signal, it's invalidated the lower trending sells. So that's a nice sign from the bulls, in my opinion. I know there was rumors about ETFs, stuff like that. I haven't been following along with any of that, honestly, but yeah, the trend itself looks great, even if we pull back a little bit. Let me check something. So actually, looking at the 4 hour here, we never even broke any structure on this micro 4 hour trend, right? Because this would have been this right here, basically would have been my confirmed higher low. Because even on just the trend starting from down here, this would have been the last time we had a little consolidation, had a little high, had a higher high. So even on the micro trend, this would be our higher low. So until we lose that, if we lose that, I would start to think that it's possible we go a little bit lower. But at this point, still looks great to me. If we get a sell signal on the trend master, yeah, maybe we'll get a little more of a pullback. But again, I think the overall trend is pretty nice still. Crow, let's take a look at Crow. I haven't looked at it since last time you got me to look at it, Maz, but we came very close to my trend line here. It may have even moved, or maybe it wasn't perfect, but either way, you could even say that we hit it. I mean, that's so close. If it didn't, that's, yeah, that we basically came in contact with my support there. At this point, I wouldn't really want to lose this. I would like to see the bulls step in right about now. Trendmaster, we have a sell signal, but it's a higher sell signal, so I'm not all too worried on it about that. However, that means that our confirmed higher low from the buy signals would be around there. Let me just turn that off so I can get it more accurate. Right there. So at this point, even if we do pull back further, I would be looking at a fib something like this. Oh, which is obviously why I had that purple box mapped out already. Would you look at that? Would you just look at it? So at this point, I would be watching this diagonal support. If we end up dropping it and flipping that support into resistance, I assume we are coming back to our fib pocket. Troll, not gonna lie, it looks pretty weak. However, something to consider in that is we are currently doing exactly a perfect double bottom, right? Even a very slight grab below and reclaim that. You know, we could even drop further because the 115 is actually down closer to 10 cents. And guys, that actually lines up with a perfect falling wedge. We have a touch point here, perfect touch point, perfect touch point. If we got another perfect touch point at the 115 lining up with that bottom of that wedge, that could be such a juicy buy opportunity. Realistically, I think anywhere from here down towards 10 cents is a great buy on this just because of this pattern here. However, that being said, if we lose that, I will absolutely be worried about that. At that point, it's possible we retrace most of this move. So something to consider there. As it stands right now, we are at support, right? That's the thing. As I said earlier, support always looks weakest. Just like up here, obviously looked strongest, right? Now we look weakest. That's very natural. But I'd rather be buying than selling at this level. Cat with mask, very similar. We've been hugging this Stuber support for weeks at this point. No idea if it'll recover or not, but this has been a buy level for me. So, you know, Troll actually did something like this, trading at my first very large Stuber fib on a 4-hour time frame. Troll did this and basically hung out trading sideways for 2 or 3 months, and then it did a very fast 25x. So I'm not saying it's going to play out the same, but again, as far as a low cap, and guys, understand this is a low cap, this is a meme coin, it's only like a $6 million market cap, I think, so understand it's very risky. But if you do like meme coining, I mean, this is just one that I've personally been accumulating a little bit of. Speaking of meme coin degenery, you guys know I talked about this one back in the day. It's actually showing some signs of life again. We actually got a perfect super fit, right? Isn't it wild how a strategy like this, that's just to show how crazy technical analysis works, that this is a coin, guys, that has, I don't even know if I think it's a $1.6 million market cap at this point. Like, the trash of the trash, and still respecting Stubers on many different time frames. This one happens to be a daily, but yeah, got into that fib pocket and rallying very nice. Basically from the 786, this is up over 60% already. So wild how that works. And speaking of that, guys, actually, I took my first ever options trade the other day. I don't typically trade options, and it was small. I just wanted to basically dip my toes at this point, but Mara or whatever the hell you want to call it, it had basically respected a Stuber fib, right? I was like, I want to dip my toes into stocks a little bit. I want to play with some options, and you know, this is a Bitcoin miner thing, and yeah, basically I wanted to see, hey, how do Stuber fibs play out with stocks? And I'm happy to say that I bought a call option along the 786. I think even just a few days ago it was sitting at like a negative 40%. I don't the timing part of options is going to screw with me a little bit, but either way, I gave it a few weeks to run, and we ended up eventually popping off like that. And just today alone, I think it pumped like 140% or something like that on that position. So very cool. Excited to play with that a little bit more. Like I said, nothing too serious. I'm still more of a crypto trader, obviously, but I wanted to play with options a little bit. So cool to see that same strategies work across different markets like that. Love to see it. What else? I want to take a look at AVAX. Let's get back over to the 5 minutes. Something good and proper. Oh yeah, look at that. Still holding that buy trend. Beautiful. Hype, I did want to keep my eye on hype on that 5 minute, because I really think we're going to see, we probably already got it. If we did, I'm going to, if we get a higher buy signal, I will be interested in laddering into another long position, basically right when we get a buy signal. If it's a higher one like this, I'm just going to start laddering positions towards my invalidation, basically, just in case that trend continues, because hype has been on an absolute moon mission. Let me finally catch up with the chat, you guys. I'm just gonna let this run right now, because I do think that's the next signal that I'm gonna want to trade. Let me just get my orders ready and that sort of thing. Uno momento. Let me know in the chat if you guys are in any interesting leverage positions. Like I said, I'm in like 12, I think. Stu is doing stocks now too. We're close to a top. That's funny. Here's the difference though, Maz. I did not FOMO into stocks. I felt left out because my brother and my dad were trading stocks. So I felt left out and wanted to play and see if my strategies would work for trading their assets as well. That's why I started trading stocks. And I throw that around loosely. I have traded a stock. All right, let me catch up on some chat. Just see how everyone's feeling about the market, etc. Plumbus is cautious. Took a fair bit of profits again on short time frame trades. Yeah, around sweet. Getting tongue tied. That I said I'd call at 117.5 area. If we don't close above it, I don't see strength, even though there is bullish fuel with the rates, alt ETFs, etc. We shall see. Yeah, I agree. That's the thing, right? Is things still look good to me. However, it is time to start being cautious and just taking profits, if nothing else, when you start getting towards those resistance levels, those major ones, right? Doesn't mean it's necessarily bearish. It's just smart. Is it a candle close below the 115 on the time frame I'm using? Well, usually even a wick. But I do leave a little wiggle room there. The 115 is there for me to remember to wait for, well, to have a stop at least that far, but I always go a little bit further if there's a round number that I like to use, or just that sort of thing. But close to the 115. Basically, at my take profit levels, I front run them a little bit. With my invalidation levels, I leave a little breathing room. The 115 I like looking for those reversals more than anything, not just for stopping my positions, but those reversals, because if that level doesn't break, there's a good chance there will be at least some sort of a reversal. It often doesn't go as high, but you get some sort of a reaction a lot of times, or like I said, just a very tight risk reward setup. Oh, sorry, I just saw that a couple people said the voice was breaking up. I assume that's Discord doing its thing again. Hopefully it's okay for most of you. Yeah, actually, Plumbus, that's a good point. It was real nice to see alts really play catch up after the rate cuts. A lot of alts have been moving very nice. I know a lot of people don't like trading alts. I mostly just traded Bitcoin until, which I planned ahead for. I said if Bitcoin breaks 110K and Bitcoin dominance drops, I will get very bullish on altcoins. And those things happened, and I've been trading the shit out of altcoins. I have a Bitcoin position open, a beautiful swing, but I'm mostly interested in trading altcoins. And guys, when I say that as well, that doesn't mean that altcoins are immune to a crash. If Bitcoin pulls back, generally speaking, altcoins are going to pull back as well. It's more so that when the market finds its footing, those altcoins are going to react a lot more aggressively than Bitcoin will, and they will bounce a lot harder than Bitcoin will at this point of the cycle. I mean, that can change at any time, but that's how I've been playing it recently. Make a stew soundboard. Oh god, no one wants to hear that. High, higher, high, lowest point between the two. Yeah, laddered into a position, bought at the 786, 886, 1115 with a little wiggle room. It is a little vague. I agree 100%. I don't have a set number that I can tell you. That part, the amount of wiggle room I leave, is a bit of a gut feeling based on, round numbers. If, let's say, the trend master is nearby, if there's anything else around that says that maybe I should give it a little extra, then I'll consider it. It's just that the 115 is my minimum wiggle room for a stop loss, basically. Yeah, I'm gonna consider I'll see how the options trading goes. I'll see how fast I can blow up an account trying to learn how to do that. And yep, I sure am taking a hype long. But understand I'm only putting in about a quarter of my entry now. I'm going to put in another quarter down here, and I'm just going to ladder into my position on the way down, basically. Why isn't that entering? Let's give it a little extra wiggle room. Yeah, I'm thinking more like invalidation below 57,555 kind of a thing, or below 57.55. Sorry, just setting a bunch of orders here. Not financial advice. You do you. This trend could break at any time. Right now, we technically don't have a higher sell signal, but the higher buy signal and just how strong the trend has been in general. That's basically leading me to a ladder in. Looks like a short setup. I never trade against the trend master. Even if you're correct about that, I never trade against that trend. Won't do it. Don't get me wrong. I think we could absolutely see a rejection from the resistance here. I see what you're seeing there. However, again, with that higher buy trend, just basically I am willing to ladder in to a long, because as long as we hold above this level here, we are holding the trend master uptrend on the 5-minute. But we'll see what happens. I already have this is looking at more of a shorter time frame one, but I already have a nice hype long from way down at around $50.82. So that one's sitting pretty good. I think that's a 25x. I should go check on that. Wi-Fi on plane sucks. Well, at least you got something to do on the plane, hey? Yeah, Elon, get on that. Yeah. What else? What else? Oh, if you guys want my my degen gamble of the day, I feel bad even bringing this up because this is such a low market cap. Understand just how risky this is. Please don't get stupid about this. But my gamble of the day was on VampCat. Look at him. A big 627,000 market cap. Not much volume, but you know what? I feel like if it was going to rug, I feel like it would have happened right here. We ended up going higher, so we'll see. I heard rumors on Twitter that on October 1st they were starting buybacks and token burns or something like that, but who knows? These are all 100% a gamble. It's the casino, it's the Solana casino, right? And guys, also, when I take a trade like this, understand that it is on the 5-minute. Don't expect this to just run for the next week or even day. If you end up sitting in some decent profits, like if this ends up being profitable in the next hour or whatever, I'll be starting to pay myself, right? But yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at, you guys. Hey, and also, guys, I don't know how many of you were in my last stream, but just something that I want to throw out there. For my public live streams, I am actually starting on a new channel. This is still powered by the Financial Summit. It's still the same partnership. They're just giving me my own channel. That's going to be about all of crypto trading, not just kind of a large portion of their following is, you know, Bitcoin maxis and people who trade longer time frames. So yeah, basically this is going to be anything crypto, Bitcoin, altcoins, meme coins, shit coins, whatever, you name it. I'm going to be streaming that. So that will be where I'm doing my public live streams. I'll still be obviously doing these Thursday evening private streams with you guys here. But as far as my public ones throughout the week, that is where I will be trading, streaming, etc. So do me a favor, subscribe to that, or do yourselves a favor and subscribe to that if you like my content. But yeah, that one I will start half-time streaming there. I'll be streaming on Financial Summit and then switching over to this channel next week, kind of doing a half and half show just to get people familiar with it. And then by the end of the month, I'm going to be streaming full-time here for my public ones, right? Private ones still here with you guys. But yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, other than that, my friends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So hopefully you guys found the stream useful. If so, and you need to rewatch any parts of it, or you missed some of it, whatever, anything like that, it will be uploaded to my StuTube Trading YouTube channel, as well as the Academy, the MDX Dashboard Academy, in the near future here. So yeah, those of you who are watching this a little bit later on my YouTube channel, if you want access to the MDX Algo indicators that I use each and every day, there's a 10% discount link in the description down below, as well as a link to trade no KYC on BloFin, where I do most of my tradings, which also grants access to my private Telegram, where I share some of my thoughts on the markets, some of my trade setup ideas, how I use these indicators, all that sort of good stuff. So if that interests you, that's down below as well. With that, my friends, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.